cheeky little bounce. Oh, well done. Runs towards goal. It's a chance. It's as good as you'll ever see. Oh, well done, Sauce. Hey, you like Pez? From the boundary line.
Hello and welcome to Behind the Boundary podcast. I'm your host Pez. I'm here with Rusty Sauce because this is about the third time he's wanted to reset and try. I should be the one struggling a little bit this week, but we had no podcast out last week, Sauce, not even a Saturday morning special.
Yeah, first time in a long time. And first of all, congratulations on the arrival of your son, 2041. That's when I've penciled it in for the St Kilda draft. So
that's it.
After the Cats beat you this week, that should lock up that spot for the next 18 years of being at the bottom. So
it's a bit ridiculous.
Starting to tank now already for your son. But yes, it was the first podcast that we've missed, and it was an interesting one, Pez, because it would have been a good one to review because we had a whole lot of futures come up last week. We had we had a pretty decent week last week, and this week no bets for you. I think that is a first in not just the podcast, Pez. Did you put any personal bets down?
Oh, I did not do anything.
I reckon that is the first time in the last maybe 15 years that you haven't had a punt on a sport.
You know, early hours of Thursday morning. Had to make my way into the hospital.
Divi 2 ping pong in Thailand. You're all over it, weren't you?
And I tell you what, I did not open up any of the betting apps or anything. So I was very, very preoccupied. And
that's very good for you, Pez, because I reckon if you had opened up and your missus has seen that little blue symbol or the orange Neds, that phone would have been launched or anything would have been launched at you for sure.
Oh, it wasn't going to dare touch anything then, but a bit disappointing. You didn't put anything out there, Sauce. What's going on?
I did put
just solo pod. Get out there.
Well, you're right. It was solo, and I should have been better. But I spoke to you during the weekend, and I didn't know how to respond because I reckon it's the first time in maybe 5 years or 6 years, probably even longer, that I've gone into a round of footy and not spoken about it with you. And
yes, that's the other thing. Yeah,
I definitely missed you, Pez. I doubted myself a whole lot of time. I did horrible in the tipping. I had a shocker in everything, but it was a weird feeling, and I wouldn't do the podcast justice and wouldn't do the fans justice by just going in solo, Pez, because everyone enjoys your comical relief, and you trying really hard every week to try and catch me.
You speak of tipping though, and something I missed out on because I'm first or second in most of the tipping competitions that I'm in, and I've got to message your mum for tips in one of them. I've got to put them on the ESPN footy tips and a bunch of others. I forgot on the Friday night to put in a tip in the competition that's probably the closest. I'm one behind this bloke. He tipped Collingwood. No, he tipped Geelong, sorry. I tipped Collingwood.
Wow.
I look after the game.
You didn't tip anyone.
I didn't put my tip in yet.
And that's bad too, because the ESPN one, you lose the margin too.
It hurt. Lost the margin, and
lost the comp.
They've got one of those joker things. So one guy used double points. So now he's equal with me, and I'm sitting second where I should have been equal first. So that hurts as well.
Mate, just another, I don't know if we've talked about this on the pod, but the joker in footy tipping, horrible. The bonus point for getting 9, equally horrible.
Yeah, it's bad.
All those extra things is horrible. The only thing that you should have in terms of the score alteration is if you don't put your team in, you get the lowest score -1. And that's the only thing that I think you should have. If you don't get the away teams or the home teams, you lose a point because, you've got to be committed to it. So, yeah. All those are bad.
I wasn't committed, and it was no good. But, life in the past week, 2 kids under 2. So it's been real fun. And you walked in the door and said, gee, you look like shit. Because
I didn't use those words exactly. I just said you look tired. I said congratulations first there, Pez. Gave you a nice little
We'll get the replay. We'll get the replay going on the doorbell, and then we'll see.
I didn't ring the doorbell because it's late at night. It's bloody 10 o'clock at night. We spent the last hour and a half talking because there's a lot going on in the last week. But how are you finding it? Have you been able to get any research done for this week's pod?
Not as much as I would usually like, but we've been having a look at a few things, and what we've looked at is some of the futures, because we did some futures prior to round 1, Sauce, in one of our shows, and everything has been paid out now.
Yes.
So let's do a little review on our future betting.
Thanks for the little timing there, Pez.
Jeez, it's not good for me.
It's not good for me, is it?
No official review. How does it end? We don't know. They've kind of lost, but they've won as well.
I have 1 week without you, and I just go out of sorts.
I don't know
Pez.
what's happened. This is like our first ever episode, I reckon, with you, because you are
Wait,
ST Ruggling.
ST Ruggling.
It is no good. So let's go back, and it's dated here. So we had some bets out on the 2nd of March, the third month of the year, and then we also had some bets the next week, which was the 9th of March, that we put out before the season started their Sauce. So we were pretty similar on some of these as well. So we had the Brisbane over 14.5 wins, and they gave us another scare against Adelaide, but beat them by a goal and saluted. So they got the 15 wins. We both had 2 units on that, so a nice little profit there. They also cemented their spot in the top 4 for this season, which was at 225, and we both had a unit on that. So we love that with the Lions. They could have, paid out a little bit earlier. But the interesting thing is Sportsbet, they paid out on
that was
the
funny.
top 4, but they didn't pay out on the over 15 wins until later on. So it was a little bit strange, wasn't
I
it?
suppose because the round probably hadn't finished, but they had definitely sewn up that top 4 spot.
But they won 15 games. So
the
it's
round hadn't finished, mate. The round hadn't
yeah,
finished
yeah,
yet.
a
But
little
it
bit
was a
silly.
little bit weird. I did message you that. I was a bit ready to get on the horn to Sportsbet and try and work that out. But that great way, and we called that early Brisbane. And they have actually been disappointing for what we had predicted them at the start of the year, but they're starting to hit some form now. And
But those lines and those odds were amazing at the start of
so
the year, and
good.
it paid off.
I remember us discussing that top 4, and it's like for them to they're predicted at 14.5 wins, but then the top 4 position was 225. Made no sense.
Yeah, no, it didn't. Should have put more on it. Season wins, I had a loss here with Essendon, under 10.5 wins. This was a fun ride because Essendon started off the season all right, won some games where they probably shouldn't have. Their list isn't that great, and they're going to miss out on the finals this year. So they got more than that. They sit on 11 wins at the moment. Lost a unit on that. So one whole unit. I'm happy to ride the Essendon unders for the season.
Mate, and much the same for me. I had GWS. It was a fun. It was looking pretty good early, and then about midway through, it started looking a bit poor. They went on a bit of that winning streak. And
Geez, when they lost the West Coast in round 2, you would have been loving
I
that.
was sitting there going, "You little ripper."
How good's that?
But you and I went topsy turvy. Then you had the first half that was not looking good, and I had the first half that was looking good. But switched around and a loss either way.
Yeah, and then this next team, the Richmond Footy Club, they have struggled this year, a little bit to do with injuries, and a big reason is Tom Lynch being out of that side. But they've had lots of things happen. I read them as a powerhouse at the start of the year with everything ticking, with Hopper and Taranto coming in, and it was a misread. They didn't get over their 13.5 wins, and I lost a unit on that as well.
Yeah, the exclusion of Lynch for most of the year has been a huge one, and them taking a little bit of time to adjust with that new midfield really costly. But Pez, the thing that would have cost the bookies so much more was where in the hell do they think West Coast was getting 8.5 wins? That is incredible.
I'm angry at myself.
They haven't had 8.5 wins in 2 years.
I'm very upset at myself.
I should
looking
have
back at that
put more on
because
it.
There's only 2 units on that. I should have just not done the podcast this year and put every unit down that I had for the whole season on West Coast under 8.5 wins at $1.87. That would have been the easiest watch and the easiest money to
lazy
make.
153 units on that, Pez.
Unbelievably good price. So we had a couple of units on that. We both ended up, we had different bets, but we both ended
it
up
was
with
pretty funny,
exactly the
actually.
same. So we both staked 7 units, and we profited 2.59 units, which has now been added to our round 22 spreadsheet as well with the profit there. So season profit, I'll recap my round 22 while I'm here, Sauce. I didn't have a bet, so I didn't stake anything, didn't profit anything, or didn't lose anything. So my AFL in 2023 so far, I've profited now 35.28 units with an ROI of just shy of 23%.
Pretty incredible, Pez. One that we both had the same bets in that, so it's a nice, easy little profit there. But the fact that we're absolutely smashing it, Pez, and for the whole year, I've staked 173 units, Pez, returned an amazing 69, very nice, 0.53 an ROI of 40. But most incredible, Pez, we've hit 104. For the total units. Incredible.
Didn't even bet last week.
Yeah, you didn't even have a bet last week. I had a short and small profit, $2, 2 units and 40 profit returned. But I had a couple of misreads in there, but we don't need to go over that because they are all on our Twitter or our x.com. And hopefully, listening to the pod, we're back in action. We can get a couple of bets and a couple of winners this week, Pez. We spoke about the futures. Are there any future bets that you're looking coming into the second last round? Almost every game this weekend can have some dire effects on the finals. Looking at it, there's some great bets now. Is like to miss the 8, to make top 4, which is pretty much done. I think Carlton can sort of test for that at the moment. I think they're $13 versus Melbourne $1.05 or $1.03.
Yep.
But to miss the top 8, to make the top 8, there's some big bets there.
Yeah, well, there's lots of things you can look at, but one thing or one bit of advice, if I could give any, is look at the AFL to miss the 8. Like, why are you betting on that team to miss or to make the 8? Is it because you think they're going to win 2? Is it because you think they're going to win 1 game and then results are going to fall their way? So jump onto the squiggle on the just Google, ladder predictor. Do your ladder predictor of what you think is going to happen, and then pause after round 23. Have a look at the positions, what needs to happen, and go through to round 24. Now, you're not going to get, well, people might, but you're not going to get 18 tips right in the next 2 weeks. So you're going to get some things wrong. But just have a look at it, because the value is a bit strange, because to miss the top 8, St Kilda are paying $2 to miss the 8, their source. And if they lose to Geelong this week, they're out. But if they beat Geelong this week, it's a good chance that they're going to make the 8. So,
because Geelong can no longer make the 8 if they beat them this week.
It's pretty up in the air there. So to miss the 8 at $2, but they're paying $2.18 on the same bookie to beat Geelong on Friday night. So I'd be looking, if you had the equity or whatever to go with it, you could bet both sides of that. You could say, all right, I'm betting St Kilda to miss the 8 to get my money back, but I'm also going to bet them to beat Geelong, because if they beat Geelong, they're going to make the 8.
Most likely, yeah.
And then go from there. This is if you think they're not going to beat Brisbane the following week.
Brisbane in Brisbane,
which is
highly unlikely.
The team that's most interesting to me here is Sydney.
Yes.
So Sydney are at $1.45 to make the 8, and they're sitting at $2.75 to miss the 8. So you got to have a look at what's going to happen and what type of things you think will happen. So Sydney are sitting on 46 points at the moment. They sit in 7th position. They would have to lose probably both games. So they play against Adelaide at Adelaide this week. Isaac Ranking back in. Are Adelaide going to, perform,
Adelaide have been very good at
perform
home.
as they do at home, or are Sydney going to get the chocolates? And then the next week at the MCG against Melbourne.
It's at the SCG.
SCG, sorry. What will Melbourne need to do in order to, are they playing for a top 2 spot? Are they playing for nothing? Or are they playing to get either 3rd or 4th and have to travel or not in the first week? What kind of team are they going to put out? So if you think Sydney are going to lose both games, you can get $2.75 for them. But I'd stay away from their markets all up, because all you would do is you'd bet against Sydney this week, and then you'd bet against them the next week with some of your profit or whatever. So it's kind of like a multi at the moment to miss the 8 or make the 8. I think going just the straight games is probably a better option.
Yeah, love the explanation there, Pez, because you are correct. It's sort of like multi-ing up. If you think Sydney's not going to make the 8, then you're better betting against them twice at $1.52 this week with Adelaide, and next week Melbourne, I think they're sitting at $1.90 or whatever. Put those together, you're getting better odds. So that's the way to do things, Pez. But it's good to explain that anyway, because there are a lot of different markets that we hit, and if we, there is a lot of good spots. I know that you could have got earlier in the year when Carlton went through that big losing streak. It was about $26 for them to miss the 8. So them coming home, and if you can hit the right form or the right time in the fixture, you can definitely make some money out of it. But 2 weeks out, everyone seems to be talking about it, but not a lot of value when you can actually multi up 2 weeks in a row.
No, it's very strange, and it's the same thing goes for me with the premiership winner. Like, sometimes it's a fun bet to put on, a little bit of an exotic bet, one that lasts the whole season. You're looking at Collingwood at $3.50 at the moment, Brisbane and Melbourne at $5, Port Adelaide at $5.50. You'd say one of those teams in the top 4 are probably going to win it. The next best is Carlton $7.50, and then it goes into Geelong $21, and everyone else is blown out under that. So if you think one of those teams like a Brisbane or a Melbourne or a Port Adelaide are going to perform well in finals, instead of putting all your eggs in one basket and putting it on a $5 or $5.50, you bet on a couple of those finals head to head, and you'll make more money that way if you think they're actually going to make the grand final, and you get time to reassess as well if big injuries happen, if hard fought games, the buys, whatever. So that's what I would do in terms of futures.
I mean, your perfect example is if you look at Melbourne, right? So Melbourne to make the grand final is sitting $2.25. So you sit there and go, oh, okay, well, that's decent sort of odds. But round 1, they're probably going to be playing, let's say the sort of fixture stays where it is, they're probably going to be playing Collingwood. They're going to be playing them at the MCG. I can't imagine that the odds would be anything about $1.90, $2 maybe. So you're probably getting even money there. They win that game or they lose that game. They're getting another game either way. The next week they're not going to get 5-cent odds. So like those two games, and just to win those two games is better odds than then to make the actual the grand final itself. So they just need to win two more games at roughly $1.20 versus $1. You know,
so would you say $2.25?
Yeah.
So for example, you put a unit on Melbourne to make the grand final at $2.25. They lose to Collingwood in the first week.
Mm-hmm.
That bet's nearly already done.
Mm-hmm.
But they're most likely going to win that next game against whatever side comes up, and they might be playing. I don't know who they're going to play.
They'll probably be sitting about $1.40,
$1.40, yeah, $1.40, $1.50. Instead of putting one unit on the $2.25, you put 3 or 4 units on that second week, and then you make money that way. So that's what punters need to think about.
And I think that's where it is. If you can pick this team early in the season, which is a fun bet to follow sometimes when you get promotions, but this far out, whoever you think's going to win, you're better to back from right now all the way through. Just back your team, no matter what the game is. If you think they're going to win it, just keep backing that team because it's a lot better odds.
Yeah, and you can always reassess.
Yeah,
you can always.
You can always bail out and make a little bit of money back as well. Yep. So that's a good way to do it. But speaking of making money, Pez, let's get into this week's second last rounds bet slip.
The fact that the size of the bets was relatively small.
Now bets with an opportunity about 50 metres out.
I was with a mate, and we were getting sort of ready to leave, and he said, I think I'm going to whack 10 on Maxi. Do you want some as well? And I said,
Oh yes, yes, yes.
Well, last 2 weeks, Pez. 2 more weeks for those betting agencies to really get their specials in order.
Cyril takes a special and goes bang.
Yeah, it's no good at the moment, but Blue Bet have the 12-up special, which is good. Neds have that for the Friday night game as well, and Ladbrokes have the one refund per day, but they've changed it again. It's only on Friday and Saturday, so it doesn't include the Sunday games as well. So this is where they try and just trick punters, try and get that money there. So it tells you that they love same-game multis, and they've hooked everyone into these same-game multis with the specials, and then people are still betting same-game multis without the specials, which is what the bookies want you to do because it's so profitable to them, because it's just not really multiplying odds, which I spoke about earlier on in the season. So there's only a few reasons to bet same-game multis, and one of them is promotions.
It definitely is, Pez. Let's get straight into the second last round, an absolute blockbuster of a round because, as we said, a lot of these games, those teams sitting about 6 down all the way to about 12th are playing each other, and they're huge impact on their remainder of 2023. Starting things off with Collingwood taking on Brisbane. Both teams are really fighting for that top spot, and Collingwood with a win will definitely salute top spot. Brisbane hoping that they can keep that minor premiership alive, yet unlikely, still getting a win at in Melbourne against the premiership favourite at the moment would be what they're aiming for. So $1.96 outsiders are Collingwood. Surprising, wouldn't be rare them being at home in Melbourne this year and be the outsiders. $1.84 favourites are the Lions, -1.5 is the line. Over under 172.5.
Yeah, it's a very interesting game, and because it is at Marvel Stadium, there's been a bit of talk about that. Why would you play this game at Marvel? You'd get 75,000 plus at the MCG. And earlier on, they played Fremantle, Collingwood versus Fremantle at the MCG, where you'd think those games could have been switched on the fixture and the AFL would have made more money. But it just hasn't worked like that. The Marvel Stadium advantages Brisbane more than it does
definitely
the MCG, because we've spoken about the percentage of wins down there as well. And the injuries at the moment to Collingwood are kind of piling up. So you got Darcy Moore, who's out injured, Jordan De Goey out injured, and Bobby Hill, who I think's in their best 23, is also out injured. They do get still side bottom, but they're putting Jacob Ryan in there as well. So Collingwood are struggling. They're missing a few different players. They had a great win or great comeback win against Geelong last Friday night, and showed, without Darcy Moore, we can change things around and we can tweak a few things and go from there. A lot of chatter this week about if Brisbane don't beat Collingwood, they can't win the grand final, and that's only because they might not finish top 2. But it's a little bit silly, like to base a round 23 game that a team can't win the grand final when they're going to finish top 4. So if they do beat Collingwood, they've got a really good chance to make the grand final because they just need 2 wins at the Gabba. You think back to the start of the year, Sauce, Collingwood and Melbourne, They beat them up at the Gabba rounds 2, round 3 or
Yep.
something like that. So they're in really good form up there. They've been struggling as of late, the Brisbane Lions. But when we talk about form heading into September, if they can start to turn that around in the last 2 weeks and move into September on fire, get 2 home games at the Gabba and then go grand final day MCG, I'll be very happy with that. So I'll be going for the Lions to try and lock up a top 2 spot. I don't have a bet. The odds, you could have gotten Brisbane as outsiders earlier in the week, and because of the teams and everything, it's drifted back into Brisbane's favour. So I'll watch with interest, but no bet for me.
Yeah, you're completely right. I mean, Brisbane, there is so much more at stake for Brisbane than Collingwood. Collingwood can drop this game. They should beat Essendon next week. They salute top spot. They'd be looking at Brisbane, there would be more stink about this if the game actually meant that they could potentially lose that top spot. But Brisbane have hit Collingwood at a perfect time. You know, they're coming in with a little bit injured. No Darcy Moore, no Dacos. That's been really documented. Brisbane, you know, they're pretty much at full strength. They're missing obviously Ashcroft through that middle, but they've also had players that have been able to come in and sort of do a similar sort of role. Everything favours Brisbane in this one. You know, the last 10 at Marvel, Brisbane are 8-2. Brisbane should have won earlier in the year against Melbourne at the MCG. They had that 1 point loss, that dramatic comeback. The time before that, they lost to Hawthorn in another game that they should have taken control. They can't afford to drop this because Pez, you mentioned that people are saying that they can't win in Melbourne, and that's all that they will have going into September, that no one will care about their relevance until they win at the MCG, and that is something that you cannot have hanging over your head going into a final series. So for me, you know, you look at the last 20 games that both of these teams have played, they're both sitting about 16-4. They're both in the reasonably same sort of spot. It's an absolute cracker, Pez. I'm leaning definitely towards Brisbane just because there's so much more for them to play, just because there's so much more on the line in terms of, you know, I guess a moral victory or them, you know, a spiritual victory. You can't swing me either way at the moment without seeing, proper conditions tomorrow, looking at how we're going into it, the final teams. But I would be leaning towards Brisbane Lions and probably a unit there if you can get a 12-up special or something like that. But Brisbane in Melbourne, pretty unpredictable.
Yeah, definitely. And then it's a big Friday night clash as well. So kind of disappointing it's not at the MCG, but we'll live with it.
I'm really surprised it's not, Pez. I would have thought at the start of the year both teams touted top 8
As
sides.
top 4, yeah.
And Brisbane obviously being I'm going to use inverted commas here, a Melbourne-based side. They previously Fitzroy as well. You think that they would have got them there. I know when they first merged, they used to have that agreement that they would play a certain amount of games in Melbourne at the MCG to cater for those fans, but this is a ludicrous decision for the AFL.
I'm not in the know of the fixturing and how they do that, but this has to be looked at as a mistake, I think.
Especially when we're looking at a floating fixture in this round too.
Yeah.
I mean, there must be something on.
I don't know what it is.
World Cup? Is the World Cup playing? No, they're not playing the MCG.
They don't even play at the MCG. They can't.
Yeah, dumb. Stupid AFL. All right, let's get on to a less than relevant Saturday afternoon clash. Richmond taking on North Melbourne. $1.17 favourites, the Tigers. $4.90 outsiders, North Melbourne. Minus 30.5 is the line. Over under 169.5 pairs. A couple of big retirements this week. A couple of premiership superstars, premiership captain announcing their retirement. So, you'd expect the Tigers to come out and just send off their superstars in a winning fashion.
Yeah, you'd think so. Now North Melbourne couldn't do that for Cunnington last week, even though Cunnington had his 2 goals and they had their moment. Essendon seemed to struggle against North Melbourne a couple of times this season, but
not just this season. That's their bogey side.
Got the 8 points, and North just couldn't get it done, which is disappointing. But Richmond, after being eliminated last week by the Saints and not in contention mathematically anymore for the 8. $1.17 is too short, but what I do like in this game, the over 169, I think both teams' seasons fully done. Their coaching shackles and the defensive shackles, I think, is just going to be off the chain, and there's going to be a lot of run, a lot of experimentation of moving that ball quickly for both sides. So I'm going to chuck a couple of units there. So 2 units on the over 169.5 in this game. The other thing I like, which if you jumped on earlier in the week, kudos to you, because Jack Riewoldt, final game, are they going to send him off in fashion? He's playing against North Melbourne, which, they have struggled. They've lost how many in a row now? 19 games in a row. They're not travelling too well. So Jack Riewoldt, he's kicked 1-3-1-1-1 in the past, 5 weeks, but I think he goes out with a bag. To score 2 goals is only $1.11. 3 goals, $1.43. 4 or more, $2.15. $3.90 for 5 or more, and then $7 for 6. I don't love those odds. So where I'm going to go is most goals.
Yeah.
Where if he gets 4 goals, I think he's got a good chance to get most goals in the game, or at least a push of a draw. So most goals, he's paying $2.35 in Group 1, which has a hell of a lot of players in there. If you only want to go with the main players and the main 6, he goes down to $2.05 in Group 2. But I'm happy to take the risk, $2.35 most goals, Group 1 for Jack Riewoldt in his send-off game.
Not worried about the third favourite Coleman medalist, Nick Larkey, at $151 for the Coleman medal, not for most goals.
Yeah, I don't think the Coleman medal will have anything to do with that. He's probably his biggest competition if the game is free flowing, like I think it will be. Larkey up forward, good hands, and if he kicks straight, he's got a chance to beat Jack. But that's what punting is. Yeah, we're gonna gamble with our money.
No, I like that one, Pez. I like the theory behind the game being a lot more free flowing, and generally see this when teams' seasons are hit out to bed. That basically there becomes a lot more players playing for their career, especially with a team like North Melbourne, who I think it was documented last week on a podcast. 13 of their best 20, well, their best for 22, use inverted commas, are recycled players. So they're playing for their career realistically now in a club that 5 or 6 wins in the last 2 years, definitely in rebuild mode. So a whole lot of things playing there. I expect the same sort of thing, a high scoring game. But the 169 sort of worries me a little bit. My numbers have it about 163, I think it was.
Oh, it's close.
So it is close, but jump on the over there with Pez and ride that one with him. Let's get on to the next game. Gold Coast taking on Carlton. 236 outsiders, the Gold Coast Suns. $1.57 favourites, the Blues. -9.5 is the line. Over under 165. Pez, the lid is off. The lid is absolutely off. They've won the last 6 or 7 or 8, or I've lost count now because they were dead to me early in the year, and I definitely jumped off at the wrong time, didn't I, Pez?
Yeah, I jumped off. I used to tip them every single week and be disappointed, and then they just ended up going on a tear, beating 3 of the top 4 sides in the last few weeks as well.
They've hit all of those sides in really great spots for the Blues, haven't they?
Oh, it's been good spots for the Blues, but it's strange to see the Blues supporters up and about. I don't remember since they were 9th and then got let into the finals because of the what do they call them? The syringe bombers or whatever they were back then. So they went in and went over there to West Coast, I think it was, in that first final and lost.
They did,
so,
yes.
They'll be playing finals this season, and they get another look at this Gold Coast Suns side. Gold Coast have played a lot better up at HBS Stadium, up at home, but Carlton absolutely destroyed them after the first 10 minutes of the game at the MCG last time. It was just easy going. There was so many goals in that game from memory from centre bounce clearances. I think they broke the record to 3/4 time of how many goals directly from centre bounce clearances. So I'll watch with interest. I think Carlton need to try and win and secure that 5th spot. And Gold Coast, they always do something at the end of the season where they start off okay and then they lose games they shouldn't, and then maybe they win a game that they shouldn't in the last couple of weeks. So could this be one? I don't know. I'm going to stay away from it.
This one's a really interesting one, Pez, because you look at Carlton traditionally, this would be a game that they lose. Now, you can't really say traditionally because they lose all their games in the last couple of years. But what I like in this one is Gold Coast at home have been a completely different side. Since they've had that coaching change, there's a little bit more free-flowing football. Their games have been a lot high scoring. The last 5 for the Gold Coast Suns, they're averaging about 170, so a lot more high scoring. What I do like, though, is them to lead in the first half, Pez. The last 10 games, they've been a team that's come out and jumped their opposition, especially in the heat and taking the other team a little bit to adjust. Carlton have been a little bit slow starting. They were slow starting last week with Melbourne. They were slow starting the week before. They've been taking a little while to get going, especially so much anticipation and pressure leading into this final series. This is a game that they should win. They're meant to win. I wonder how they respond, but $2.20, Pez, for Gold Coast to be leading at halftime. I don't mind that at all. I will wait until the final teams, Pez, but that's where I'd be leaning, especially with, as I said, the last 10, they've all been up at halftime, the Gold Coast Suns.
If you haven't had a look at it yet, the teams are out and you've got a lot to go through with the ins for Gold Coast there. So I'll let you do that in your own time because we don't have 10 minutes here.
Why, they've gone absolutely through them, have they?
Oh, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 omissions.
Anyone big? Just while we're on the pod, might as well read them out.
Oh, might as well go then. McPherson, Hollands, Faha, Sam Day. Holman's injured, and there was the sub that was out as well. So a lot of different names in. You got Sexton, King, Fiorini, Butterick,
Sexton, our man.
Johnston. Sexton's good. He would have been really good at like a
good
say,
club.
if he was at if he was at a Collingwood this year. Like he's really handy as that mid-sized forward.
Definitely. All right, let's get on to another one that has great impact on the final series pairs. GWS taking on Essendon, $1.41 favourites. The Giants, 282 outsiders. Essendon, minus 15.5 is the line, over under 167.5. Pairs, you know, we won money on Essendon. We lost money actually on Essendon overperforming this year, 10.5 wins, and they've gone over that. Can they keep the finals dream alive so that they can finish in 8th and get belted in the first week?
One of these teams will be eliminated this week from contention, and Essendon's next opponent after this is Collingwood, and GWS's next opponent is Carlton at Marvel. So that's not somewhere you want to be at the moment. So this is a huge clash, 9th versus 10th. I wouldn't mind the Giants at the $1.40 mark here. Jake Stringer comes back in, Sammy Draper comes back in, which is huge for the Bombers, and not much at GWS, but GWS have the better talent. They play better at Giant Stadium in front of no crowd, so I'll be somewhere around the Giants. I want to see what the line starts to close at as well, and I'm possibly going to be putting that out. So if I do put it out, it will be tweeted out on Twitter and then added to the spreadsheet, but if not, it'll just be, you know, that old bale hay just rolling through.
Like last week's whole bet slip for you, Pez. I really like the Giants in this one. I think that you know, $1.41 for the Giants, who are the absolute kings of winning games away from their home ground. You know, take on the Bombers, who have won back-to-back weeks, but they've beaten North Melbourne, they've beaten West Coast. You look at them against sides, you know, in a similar sort of spot to where they are. Sydney, they lose by a couple of points. The Doggies, they lost. Geelong, they lost. You look at the Giants, and again, similar sort of sides in the Dogs and Adelaide. They both had wins, and then they beat the Gold Coast in there as well. A direct comparison line. The Doggies, when they played each other 4 weeks ago versus 3 weeks ago, GWS win by 5. The Essendon Bombers lose by 9. So for me, it's all over the Giants. I wouldn't mind 2 units on them at $1.41. So I'll lock that in, Pez, for a nice little win. Probably over at Ned's 12 up special, or over at
it has to be Blue Bet because it's Ned's
is only doing the Friday
night.
night. That's right. Yep. But I don't mind that one at all, and even more better. Seeing that
more better,
even more better. I told you I'm struggling.
I hope your bets do better than your English.
Yeah, well, me too. All right, Pez. Let's get into the next one. The next one is the big one, Pez. It is the absolute winner, goes through to a final series for 2023, most likely. And the loser, well, that is season done. I'm talking about your Saints, Pez, versus my Cats. The BTB special. It is an annual thing that we do.
The rivalry round.
The rivalry round. The Saints got the chocolates, was it last year, at a game at Marvel where we had way too many beers and put a couple of reckless bets down.
Yeah, I don't know how we came back in that game.
Sitting at the pub watching, who was it? There was Noah Bolton kicked 2 goals in the last minute or something against North Melbourne to win a nice big multi, and
headed over to
there and had too many beers. But let's get on to the big clash Saturday night, Marvel Stadium. Your Saints $2.18 versus my Cats $1.66. Minus 7.5 is the line, over under 160.5 pairs. Winner goes through to a final series. That is the equation. Who gets the chocolates?
Oh, it's hard to say for this one, isn't it? I was hoping...
don't no line bullshit.
I was hoping...
Talk through the game and then give me a tip.
I'll talk through it because I was hoping that Tom Hawkins, he never hoped that someone is injured, but he already got injured. So I was hoping just he needed another week of recovery, but he's straight back in, and he is what do you call it? What are you scared of? What are kids scared of? The boogeyman under the bed? Tom Hawkins is St Kilda's boogeyman because he has dominated them. 10 goals in the last 3 meetings, and you go back even further, he's absolutely on fire against the Saints, kicking multiple goals in the last 5 games, a bag of 5 as well, and the lowest of 2. So Geelong have won 1, 2, 3, 4 out of the last 5. St Kilda had that 1 win in round 9 last year, but round 21 up at Alphabet Stadium, Geelong towered St Kilda up as well. So this is big. $2.18 on Sportsbet. You go over to Bluebet where the 12 up special is, and usually Bluebet, they drop the odds down a little bit compared to what Sportsbet is, but you get more money for St Kilda. So at Blue Bet, they're thinking Tom Hawkins is coming in and kicking a bag as well. So I thought we had the defence to contain him, and maybe they're focused on containing Cameron last time instead of containing Hawkins, but they need to do something about that. Because it's rivalry round Sauce.
Yes, get on it.
And what it is, we'll head over to Blue Bet and we'll get behind the mighty Saints, 225. My son, Madden, we watched St Kilda versus Richmond last week, got the win. So in his lifetime as a St Kilda fan, never lost.
Oh,
never ever lost. So there's a stat for you.
I'm glad Uncle Sauce's team's going to be the one that delivers his 50% win rate in his short lifespan, Pez. But I like that. I like that you're putting it on the line there.
It's better than most St Kilda fans' win percentage in their lifespan because they're just a disappointment, really.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good. Nice name, Madden, as well, by the way. I think you lied to me about the 2 syllables starting with C, by the way.
I didn't say anything.
You did. We had that discussion. Anyway, I love the value in this one, Pez. And look, I'll put it out to bed. I'll put 2 units on the Cats, $1.66 over at Blue Bet.
You're putting 2?
What do you put on?
I was going to put 1, but I'll put on 2 now.
I'll put on 1 unit, whatever. I'll put on whatever. I'll match whatever Pez does because it doesn't matter. I'll basically take his. Might even do what the old mug punter said and put 50 on the table there, Pez, and I'll take that money as well and get that back from earlier in the year.
You know what? It'd be better for you to put 50 on the table, but I get more money. I get more money here.
Damn it!
And I get a 12 up special here as well. So I don't know what you want to do with that.
Well, last time we both won I just told you what I want to do. I want to take you $50.
I'll give mine to Blue Bet. Just for this one.
Soft. But what I like in this one, Pez, as you said, the Cats have get some form back in terms of their big forward. There's rumours that Guthrie's coming back as well, which would help that inject some life into that midfield. The last seven out of the last 8 games, the Cats have dominated the Saints. Of course, that last one last year, that close one, loss for the Cats. Playing at Marvel suits the Saints, but what we know, what the Saints have been doing this year is they've been keeping it low against sides that are around about the same or better at them. And for me, 171.5 Pez. I've bumped this up to, you can get $1.32 for 171 to go under the alternate line. I'm expecting a low scoring game because I think the Saints will contain. They'll let the Hawkins go nuts. He'll kick his 5 or 6, but they'll contain everyone else and keep it quite low scoring. But what I like, Pez, is the Saints in these low scoring games, they're just letting the backs run wild. And Geelong for possessions hasn't been a team that you've really been betting on. So not something there. But the people that have been good for them have been their backmen, Pez. Zach Toohey and Zach Guthrie, both the Zacks there, and little baby Guth. Him to get 15, Pez, you can get a great mark at $1.33. He's missed it once out of the last 5, but against all teams that give away possessions to the backs, Sydney, Western Bulldogs, Port Adelaide, all gone over 20. So I expect the exact same thing here with Zach against the Saints. So for 15 or more, $1.33, love that. $2.65, you get a little bit cheeky for the 20. Zach Toohey, last 5, he has hit all of those over 15, $1.22 for that Pez. You partner those 3 up there, you get nice little odds. Some sort of multi, probably about $2.65, I think it was. I've got to have to check my maths there.
Don't be guessing around here.
No, I've written my notes down there, but they're a bit all over the place, Pez. You can see how much I'm shocking. I'll make sure I put that one out on Twitter, Pez, but I'll be looking for a 3-league same-game multi, backing in the Cats to win, but focusing on defenders against the Saints and the under. Both have been profitable over the last month, so jump all over that.
So just loading up on the Cats again, ready to lose, and from premiers to missing the 8 this round, so that'll be good.
No, you're talking about Sydney. That's our next game, Pez. So playing in the grand final and missing the 8. But anyway, that's fine. Easy confused when you don't really understand what a premiership win is, especially when we're talking about the Cats. So we'll get on to the next one, Pez. Adelaide taking on Sydney. $1.52 favourites are the Crows. $2.49 outsiders the Swans. Minus 11.5 is the line. Over under 173.5.
I'm just
sorry, it was a little bit of a low blow, but
I'm just thinking of because I didn't check on the day, but what the odds would have been at 3/4 time for St Kilda to beat Geelong in that grand final. And
Tom Hawkins played well in that game too, didn't he?
And Lenny Hayes to
kicked a very crucial point.
Get the yes, it was one of the biggest points in AFL history. That one.
They gave him 6 points. It was so big.
was sitting behind those goals and live. I'll be honest,
I was up the other end, and
I didn't notice.
It very clearly hit the post from the other end.
I probably didn't notice because I just dropped the head in the knees when I was like, oh shit, here it goes, here they come. Sydney. This is the one that's weird for me with those future bettings, to make the 8 at $1.45, to miss the 8 at $2.75. Adelaide playing good at home. $1.52 is probably too short. If they were at around $1.70, $1.75, I'd probably be with them. So in this one, are you looking at Taylor Walker to try and fight for the Coleman medal in the last 2 rounds?
I mean, I'd be focusing on them trying to make the finals. I can't.
Oh, you would be.
You know, that's what I'd be doing for Adelaide.
Because they got West Coast in the last round, which is what
I think that's the one that he loads up on, I'd say.
If he kicks a bag here and goes from there, but they've got to focus on getting the 4 points. They've been very inconsistent, the Crows, and just need to come out and try and get that win against the Swans, who started off really poor, got their players back, and they're around the mark. They're sitting inside the 8 at 7th position. So it's been decent from Sydney after some shocking losses earlier on. So this will be a game of great interest for that finals race, and a Saturday night special, which I won't be watching because I'll be watching the Mighty Saints eliminate the Cats in 2023.
To know about that one, Pez, but I love the value here with the Swans. I think they are a team finding form at the right time. Were struck by injuries early. They've won the last 5, Pez, against pretty decent sides too. You put the Dogs in there, you put the Giants in there, and then those other sides that are sort of fighting for the 8 as well. You sort of Essendon and potentially Fremantle when they've been hitting some form as well. Adelaide have been really inconsistent. They are young. They do look like they are sort of slowing. That loss the other week against the Giants at home really defined their season. And they had a good win against Port Adelaide, who always seem to struggle against the Crows, Pez. But 255 is what I jumped on earlier in the week on Blue Bet for the Swans, 1 unit, just straight out on the nose, Pez. What they've done over the last 5-6 games is they've really shifted defence. So they've gone up into top 10 in defence. The last 5 weeks, they've actually gone up to top 6 in defence for over those wins. But they've also bumped up their offence. So Adelaide have been basically top of the tree for offence all year. They slipped to second, giving away 1 to, believe it or not, Pez, Melbourne. Pretty incredible considering they've had that change. And Sydney have gone into the top 10 for offence as well. So hitting form at the right time. We know that they are a young and building side. They had success last year and an amazing final series, except for that grand final. They are fighting to get back. And if they get back, Pez, it's going to be a really, really tough beat them for anyone playing them coming from 6th or 7th. My money's with the Swans there. I like them to get the chocolates. Use that experience, and that's finals experience in big games against the Crows, a young side that probably is a year off making a big dent next year.
I'll have to have a look because it's a 15-minute later start time than the St Kilda Geelong game, so I'll see how the Saints are going after 10 or 11, 12 minutes, and if it's not looking good, I might have to go Adelaide so I can try and get one up on the round and see how we go.
Yes, all right, let's get on to the next one, Pez. The next one is GWS. No, it's not. It is
Bulldogs.
The Bulldogs taking on West Coast, the Battle of the West. $2. This is not really much to talk about this one. $2 favourites of the Dogs, $15 outsiders West Coast, minus 65.5, over under 174.5 Pez. The Dogs just need to win this, and they basically sell up a last round clash against the Cats to make the 8. There's not much really to discuss in this one.
Not really. You got the line at 65, which is a bit strange. You go to handicap markets, you can get a plus 39 market, which is weird that you don't usually see. West Coast paying $4.30, and a plus 24.5 market, which West Coast are paying $7.50 at plus 24.5. So if you think anything's going to happen with West Coast after a 101-point embarrassing loss to Fremantle last week, not very good.
Biggest one in their little derby history. That one.
You'd think you'd want to put it in, and especially in those last few minutes, and not let that score go over 100. But
especially with a couple of their stars, retiring and sort of coming to the end of their careers, they'd like to try and get a win in the last 2 because they're basically set that last spot up. So
it's going to be a clean out at West Coast season's end in more ways than one, I think. But interesting in the most goals, you've got to flip a coin. Or who do you think is going to do it? Is it going to be the big forward in Naughty Norton? Is Ugo Hagen going to come in and get that job done? Is Cody Waitman going to do it, or is it going to be someone else? So you've got Norton and Waitman at 350 and Ugo Hagen at 360 for most goals. So what's going to happen, or do you multi them all up for 2 each and do something there? I'm not doing anything in this game. I don't have much interest at all. If Geelong lose on Saturday night, you'll have a lot of interest because you want the.
Well, it doesn't
Doggies.
matter. I'm pretty sure that if we lose, Pez, that's our season dead. But we would want the Western Bulldogs to lose to keep our finals hope alive. But you've spoken way too much about the Bulldogs in this game and West Coast because it's a shit game. Minus 65.5. The Dogs, all they want to do is just bruise-free football, setting themselves up for next week. They just need to get the chocolates, set themselves up for next week. I love what you said about the forwards. I wouldn't be worrying about the little fella there because tall forwards against West Coast are where it pays out. They're averaging 3 or 4, I think it's 4 more shots against West Coast tall forwards, that is. So I'd be looking for Norton to get the young fella going into a final series, hopefully, for the Dogs. So that's enough about the West Coast Eagles.
Yeah, let's get into the D's and the Hawks.
Yeah, big game this one, especially with Hawthorn getting a surprising win last week against the Dogs. 123 favourites are the D's, 425 outsiders the Hawks. Minus 26.5 is the line, over under 167.5. Pez, last week Melbourne, they weren't disappointing. They just hit a Carlton at the right time. It was a great game of football on that Saturday night. Low scoring, but great. They'll be looking to bounce back. It's very rare this season that Melbourne really don't respond after a loss.
Yeah, and a big loss with the Petrarca kick going through the goals.
Yes.
Was it touch, Sauce?
It didn't look it.
Inconclusive.
It didn't look it.
Like the thing. It's a bit strange.
I still don't like. I know we've spoken about this 100 times, Pez, but like right now, I can jump on my phone. I can go on to Bet365 in high definition quality filming.
Russian table tennis.
I'll be able to watch Russian table tennis, but we can't get a fucking clear cut view of a ball in Melbourne. When there's so many, what are we up to? Like 5K now, 7K, or we can't just get a clear picture.
It's so bad how they zoom in and it just becomes pixelated. It's like the Minecraft game that the kids are playing these days.
Minecraft looks clearer.
Sega Mega Drive, or maybe even go back to the Atari with the joystick and the Space Invaders. It looks more pixelated.
Pong's
than
better
that.
quality than what they're doing here, back and forth. Pez. But I just don't understand. Like, especially when you look at like. We continually say this too, and the commentator's just like, "Oh, that's going to be inconclusive, so we're just going to forget about it." What do you mean? This is the 4th or 5th year we've been doing this.
And you look at other major sports, and usually when there's
the NBA is unbelievable.
NBA, the MLB is decent as well because they usually get the call right if there's a challenge or an overturn. The only other one is you look at cricket where there's a lot of umpires call because of the LBW decisions, but the AFL is just the worst one of the lot.
But even cricket, Pez, they got a situation where they can map out what's going to happen and give it a result from that. And they'll still give a result from a perceived thing like if it didn't hit this, the LBW decision. But we can't get something right like that. It's basic common sense, man. I just fix it.
I don't know how they haven't fixed it after so many years. All right, so Melbourne $1.23, probably not worth it. The Hawks could have ended the Bulldogs season is what we've got to think about last week because they came back against them down in Tassie. The Hawks are playing with freedom. They literally can't go above the Gold Coast Suns in the last 2 weeks, and that's why they played with the shackles off last week because they sit on 28 points all up. Gold Coast sit on 36 as well as Fremantle, and Hawthorn can win the last 2 games and still get the 3rd pick. So freedom from them, they're looking really good, and I think in a couple of years they're going to be a really strong contending side. It's Sunday, too far away, nothing for me yet. $1.23 is too short to back Melbourne. Watch with interest.
Yeah, watching with massive interest in this one, Pez. I think this is a great spot for Hawthorn. As you said, they got 2 wins. They can win both their games and disrupt the final series and stop people's top 4 hopes. They've got so much to play for. I can't wait till grand final day, Pez. The moment that siren is gone, jumping on Sportsbet and jumping on Hawthorn next year to make the 8. Oh. They are looking in ripping form. They have got something really going in that midfield. They're going to add some extra depth in that through that draft, which from all reports is quite a strong draft. You're right. There's not enough money in this one. The line is very, very enticing, but Melbourne have too much to lose, Pez. They're going to blow a top 4 spot and leave the finals door open for Carlton. I don't think so. The D's should get this done. They're in good form. They've won 4 of the last 5. They should have won 5 out of 5 against as we just spoke, the DRS or whatever they're calling it, the Snicko. Anything else said better technology than what the AFL uses. Refused to reference the arc there, but all over Melbourne, Pez. There's too much for them to play for.
So you're betting on Melbourne?
$1.23, it's too short,
Yep.
but you've got to be all over them. If you're putting your money down anywhere, that's where you'd go. As I said, the 20.5 is enticing, but Melbourne can't afford to have a flop of form right now.
Yeah, that win would have been nice last week for them. It would have locked it up.
Would have locked it up, and they would have still had a chance of making a top 2 spot in a home final.
'Cause
They can't throw away a home final.
If they do lose this to Hawthorn, then it's a huge clash against Sydney, because Sydney will be fighting for the 8. Melbourne will be fighting for a top 4 spot.
At the SCG.
And then you got Carlton playing GWS. Like,
Carlton coming up the back.
So many things could happen in this last 2
They
rounds
did this a
of footy.
couple of
It's
years
good.
ago, Melbourne, where they basically, the last couple of rounds, they basically blew their season from a dumb game. They'll be locked in for this one, Pez.
All right, here we go. Let's get to the other pretty meaningless game. You'd think Port Adelaide run over the top of the Dockers here.
It's only meaningless if Port Adelaide do what they should do. But Fremantle, another side that has the freedom to play with, they can't really jump too far up the ladder. They're pretty locked in there, Pez. 254 outsiders are Fremantle. $1.52 favourites are the the Power. The over-under for this one, Pez, 169.5. Very nice. Minus 11.5 is the line. Fremantle have been playing some good form. They'll be looking to do exactly what Hawthorn have done the last week, but disrupt that top 8 and just try and get some wins here and there while looking for next year. Really disappointing season for Fremantle. The last game at home for them, they'll want to give their fans a way to end the season.
Yeah, I've got a different viewpoint to look at this game in, because depending on the Friday night result will depend on a lot of how Port Adelaide need to go about this game. Because if Collingwood do beat the Brisbane Lions, that top 2 spot is there, because all Port Adelaide need to do is win against Fremantle, and then the next week win at home against Richmond, who are already doing all their retiring things in round 23. So round 24, travelling, not going to matter too much to Richmond. So depending how Friday night goes, and if you can get on it quickly at $1.52, if Collingwood win on Friday night, I'll be jumping for a few units on Port Adelaide to beat Fremantle, maybe even at the line. So just bear with it, and we'll have a look on Friday night.
Well, I think it'd be better to take that $1.52 right now, Pez, because they've got too much to play for. They lose this. Let's say they lose this game and Melbourne win, which we expect Melbourne to win. That puts them a deadlock for second. Like second, third. They don't want to be playing.
Not with their percentage, because they'll drop down to 4th if that happens.
But that's exactly right. They don't want to be playing Collingwood at the G first week of finals. You don't want to be. That's the one thing you want to avoid all this final series is the Collingwood. I mean, they're not going to leave Melbourne, but you want to avoid them at the G. Go up to Brisbane, a team that has struggled in finals, specifically with their goal kicking. A young, up and about Port Adelaide. They did it last year. They could do it again. I love the value there at $1.52, Pez. I think that I'm going to actually, you know what? I'm going to jump on that right now. $1.52, 2 units for me. Blue bet.
So you'd prefer to play Brisbane at the Gabba than to play Collingwood at the MCG?
Of course you would. Of course you would. There's too much for them to play for. Like way too much. Like all these teams just need to focus on winning. This is you got to buy before the finals. Lock in. Go hard.
Yeah, and in agreement, I think that will drop a lot over the next coming days. So interesting. We're back to it there, Sauce, with the podcast. So hopefully it wasn't too much of an inconvenience to the fans
to me.
out
I
there.
struggled.
Or not to the fans out there if they actually got it. And thanks a lot to the congratulations out on Twitter or X as well. From there, and a couple of the DMs we got on the socials as well. So thank you very much. Appreciate it, and my family does. And then hopefully we can be back ready to go and ready to start a big 2023 finals campaign. I know it's going to be a big show next week, depending on who wins, the Saints or the Cats.
It will be, Pez. Before we get to looking ahead, it was really nice to see everyone respect, obviously, that we didn't have a podcast and leaving us. We obviously get heaps of DMs and that about bets, but everyone was really respectful last week. The congratulations, fantastic, and it is good to have you back, Pez. But I had a tweet from a mate earlier in the week, a good old fan of the show, Finster, and he was like, you know what, if Pez doesn't able to back it up the second week, he's like, here's a bet for you, which
Cheeky!
And he's vying for your spot, Pez.
When I told you I wasn't going to do the show, I said you need to get a replacement for me.
not,
I
you-
did.
you-
I said you jump on board. You get a replacement.
I've been trying to get
if
a
you want.
replace you all year because you're struggling. No, you're not actually. You're having a great year, Pez. But Finster with 7 A's, FINTSAAAA, 7 of those bad boys, has sent in a cheeky multi that he thinks is going to win, Pez.
He goes for the Bombers, so he's got no idea, I reckon.
Well, he's left the Bombers out, Pez. He's playing with his wallet, not his heart. Thank God for him. It's a ripping $17.08. He's got the bet return here if he needs. Brisbane minus 15.5. The try bet, $2.70. Richmond to lead at every quarter, $1.69. Oh, don't mind that. That odds against the North Melbourne, $1.69 lead at all quarters like that. Western Bulldogs to lead at every quarter. Not so enticing, but $1.17. And your man, Jack Sinclair. Most disposals, $3.20, Group 1. So that gives you odds of $17.08 in Pez. And
Cheeky!
That is cheeky, very much so, by Finster.
How much is he losing on that one?
A lot. He's got no money there, but it's a shocking bet. No, just kidding. He's just not as touted as Pez and Sauce on the unit front. He seems to be quite often the one leg loser every single week. And
so if this happens because you've put it out there to the public, and is it Finster's first bet on the pod?
Probably, yeah.
He's
going to tell us how many units. So
he could be going at minus 100% ROI after this one.
And then he listens every week, Pez. He always sends a couple of tweets there and references he doesn't like you with the Bombers, so he won't like that one. I'm sure he'll send you a couple of little tweets there for you to reference. But
I can send him a couple of empty syringes as well if he goes for the Bombers.
And there was the jab. All right, so yes.
Yeah, and it's not fun. We use the same joke for the Bombers every time. It's not fair. I apologise, Finster. I should not have done that. It should have just been you haven't won a final since 2004. So, and they're not going to make the finals this year.
I'm glad we don't recycle jokes there, Pez.
They're not going to make the finals this year, so that's going to jump up to close to 7,000 days by the end of next season. So
I wonder what the odds would have been if you could back like the next 7 or 8 years for Essendon not to win a final. So he got the things like North Melbourne not to miss the 8 for the last 5 years, probably paying $1, so not much money there. But
not to make
what the odds would have been for them not to win a final in 8 years? It would have been huge.
In 8 years,
is that what it is? Is that what it is? It's about 8 years, isn't it?
19.
19 years. Yeah. Sorry. Oh, Jesus. My maths is shocking. The 7,000 days for me. All right, let's wrap things up. Make sure you jump onto our Twitter.
7,000 days is 8 years. Sauce reckons there's nearly 1,000 days a year.
I'm struggling. How long this podcast has got, it feels like 1,000 days.
You're struggling. I need to get to bed because I'm not getting much sleep tonight, I don't think.
Yeah, I'm trying to get you in training for... No, I don't know what I'm trying to do.
You're just keeping me up.
Make sure you jump on our Twitter, our Facebook, what else are we on? TikTok, all of the TikTok, socials. Yeah, jump on there. Make sure you jump on all podcast providers. Leave a comment, a 5-star review. That's how other punters are able to find us. Pez, any last words before you finally hit the hay?
I'm Pez. Peace out. I'll be up in not very long doing a feed.
Cool. I won't be sticking around for that. All right, I'm still Sauce. We'll catch up next time, and of course, go Cats.
Now you're